Hi beauties, it is Shay here, and today I'm going to go live with my friend Diego from Young Pueblo. His new book is out. It's called Clarity and Connection. And so we're going to talk about this book. We're going to talk about a few things in it, a little bit about conscious relationship, and generally just jam out on a few things together. And when we get started, once he's on, we're going to turn off the comments. So if you have a question, you can post it in the question box. It's so nice to see you all. I'm a little bit sleepy. I didn't sleep very much last night, so looking a little tired. I'm going to spend the day being cozy. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation with Diego. He's a dear friend of mine. He's such a generous human being and really love his work, and I think many of you do too, so I thought it'd be fun for us to share a conversation. Let me just see if he is requesting to join here. Not yet. Hello, thank you for being here. All right. Let's see here. Oh, here he is. Okay.
Hey,
Hello.
how's it going, my friend?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well.
Nice
Thank
to
you
see
so
you.
much for making time to talk.
Absolutely, yeah. It's really nice to see you. We haven't had a chat face to face in a while, so
Yeah,
nice to see you again. How's everything been? How are you feeling these days?
I'm feeling pretty good. It's been, yeah, just a big shift with the book coming out, and there's been like a lot of sort of like ups and downs that have been great. Things really good, going well with the book, and then some like personal family things that have been tough. I had an aunt that passed away recently from COVID back home in Ecuador, and that's
Mhm.
been pretty hard for my family.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
really sorry to hear that.
yeah, thank you. But otherwise, things have been beautiful, and I feel really fortunate, and I'm just happy that yeah, all the energy that I put into the book is finally out there in the world, and that people are receiving it well.
Yay.
Yeah,
It's
how have
such,
things been with you?
oh, you know what? Honestly, about the same. I could say pretty much the same description. It's when people ask, how are you? I always feel like it's a dual answer, you know? I'm really good and I'm going through a lot. It's always
Yeah.
like that. So, yeah, it's been a really, I mean, obviously it's been an intense year for everyone. Um, Personally over here, I've been writing my book too, so that's been a process.
Mm.
Had no idea how emotional that process was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, so we've just been kind of going through it on, some family stuff has happened and also like a lot of amazing things have happened. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, you know how it is, but the book thing I think was pretty much the most consuming part of my year. And I kind of have you to thank a little bit for kind of getting that engine started because you were the one who was like, hey, like you should get an agent. And you kind of like nudged me to get going on that. So thank you.
I'm so excited for your book to come out.
Thanks. I'm
Yeah.
I'm excited too. I honestly didn't know if I was going to get it done. I was like this it felt like the
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing ever. So I just have such deep respect for authors in general and like anyone like you who writes more than one book. I'm like, wow, like it's I don't think people realize like how much goes into it.
Yeah.
um I
It's
certainly didn't.
it's an incredibly revealing process. I feel like each time it just like shows me where I've grown and shows me like where I need to do more work,
Yeah.
where because like it's just a long journey to get the book from like, an idea to a manuscript and to like actually, seeing the digital version to then seeing the like hardcover, the actual copy of it and then having it out in stores. It's a long road.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. I'm really excited about this. It just arrived like 2 days ago. I've been reading it. um I have your other book, Inward, as well. So tell us about this book. Like,
Yeah,
how is it different?
this one's pretty, it's different in that like Inward feels like a very warm introduction to introspection and
Hmm.
just getting to know yourself. And it's supposed to help people just build a new framework with which they can understand themselves, but also in a very light manner. Like I intentionally wrote inward for people who've never meditated before, for people who haven't seen a therapist, you know, for people who are just realizing that, oh, I could benefit from doing some sort of introspective work. But then clarity and connection is a big shift. It's like, okay, what happens after you started that journey, after you started
Yeah.
doing a lot of that individual personal focus? And what I've seen in my own, you know, through my personal journey and through other people, it's that you do come out with a sort of better sense of clarity. You understand yourself and you understand other people better.
Mhm.
And then automatically and very naturally, your connections just become a lot deeper.
Yeah.
So I wanted to set clarity and connection up in a way where it still continues that personal transformation vibe, like a lot of pieces are about the individual, but we start leaning into like, what does friendship look like? What do you know, what is like a good nourishing friendship feel like, and what do deep relationships require? And you know, what questions can I ask myself so I can better engage with my partner or with you know, whomever I'm close to.
Yeah, I love that. And I see like you broke it up into really simple sections here.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, self-awareness, unbinding the love between us, growing in a new life. Is that like going through different levels? Like, are they all like flowing from one through the other, or why did you
Yeah,
split up
yeah.
that way?
They do flow a bit. You know, it's funny because that book is really the best writings from like 2018 to 2020.
Yeah.
And but then when I was kind of seeing like, you know, putting them all together, I did get to see a clear makeup of the book, and it was pretty clear, you know, because like when you're developing self-awareness, then you're like, okay, like I start seeing my mental movements, I start seeing my patterns, and then it's like, oh, wait, so I have to do some serious unbinding work. There's a lot of attachment here. There's a lot of like rough mental conditioning that I've been holding on to that needs to like not only need to shed light on it, but I need to shed practice on it so that I can start just like, you know, pulling it apart.
Yeah.
Um, and then it felt pretty natural to go into the love between us because there's just, you know, a lot of the work, like even the name Young Pueblo, right? This pen name that I write under, it's geared towards this idea that we can build a much better world, but it because we're as a whole collectively we're very young and we could do a lot of maturing, but a lot of that will be like better done through our personal internal work, and our internal work will allow us to not only stop harming ourselves and to stop harming each other, but it'll help us just like have more creativity and have a better view of what we can do next to make the world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
But before we can do that sort of very external work, like the next immediate circle outside of your personal transformation is like, how do I deal with the people around me? Like, how do I handle these loving relationships? Like, am
Yeah.
I adding nourishment to them? Am I having proper boundaries? Like, am I, you know, showing up in a way that feels right for me and feels
Mm-hmm.
right for my goals?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I felt like, yeah, let's focus on connections before we stretch even further out into the world.
Yeah, I love that. For I feel like, on Instagram, one of the things that I've noticed is some people just see a writer or a speaker or a teacher and they think like, oh, they just do Instagram. So I kind of wanted to dig a little bit deeper with you, and then I wanted to read a little bit of your book because I want people to know a little bit more about you and the journey that brought you here and like what world. I mean, we read your messages, but I'm curious, what you're here for. Like, what do you feel like your calling is?
Oh, that's cool. I think for me, like I feel like the initial calling to writing was like I was shocked that healing was even possible. You
Mm,
know, and when I started meditating, I was like, I'm actually feeling better. You know, my mind feels lighter, and that felt like such a shock that because like in the Western world, you know, especially with the way that our generation grew up, it was like if you have something difficult physically or mentally, you're just gonna have to deal with it for the rest of your life, and at best you can cover up the symptoms, but there won't be any clear like pathways towards a solution. So when I got into like, you know, deep meditation and I started seeing the results, I was just like, whoa, like this is real. You know, there's no suppressing happening. There's no like spiritual bypassing. It's just like you're when you're decreasing the intensity of your reactions, your mind just has a lot more space. Like, and that space is not only for better decision making, but it's for just having much more loving awareness, much more loving actions, and much more just this ability to be present in your life in a new way. So my initial, you know, mission just felt like, okay, I'm not perfectly healed. I have a lot of stuff that I'm working on, but it would be cool to put out different reflective points that could hopefully inspire other people to, whether they want to meditate or not, whether they want to see a therapist, whether they want to get into journaling, to just encourage people to realize that we live in a very special time
Yeah.
where there are a lot of different paths that you can take to do some serious transformational work, because that transformational work is ultimately going to help us build a better world.
Hmm. Beautiful. I love that. A few people are asking how to find your author account. It's at Young Pueblo.
Mm-hmm.
Name is Diego. Writes under Young Pueblo. This is the newest book. It's Clarity and Connection. I'm a big fan. I keep your books and a few of my other friends' books right on a table in the living room. And sometimes when I need a break, I just pick it up and like flip to a page, sort of like, a tarot card or something. I'm like, what's this message going to be? And I pulled this page 75, so I want to read it because
Sure.
this is, I feel like what you wrote here is sort of the foundation for all growth work. Throw away the idea that you need to pause your life until you are fully healed. This is a different way of being attached to perfection. Progress happens when you make better decisions in the midst of living. You can simultaneously heal your past while being open to the present.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. It's so succinct and well said. And I actually this year have been seeing my own perfectionism
Mm.
under the magnifying glass, and I've been like, whew, that's a lot of perfectionism going on. And I think many people can relate to feeling like they need to be perfect, like you said, perfectly healed. Like that doesn't even exist. There's no perfectly healed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I'd love for your take on this piece and what else you have to share on that.
Yeah, that one felt especially important to write, and also to like kind of, because I have other pieces that are sort of similar, which are just sort of just attacking the idea of perfection. But when it comes to our own healing, I just remember, I've spent a few years now on social media and
Mhm.
just seeing the different trends, because every few years there will be different ideas that everyone will be really attracted to, and we'll be collectively dissecting these ideas. Like I remember back in like 2015 to 2017, everyone was talking about self-love. Everyone's talking about,
Yeah.
how, like, what is self-love? What does it mean to you? How can I activate this in my life? And then, okay, we all found that, okay, self-love is something that's actually quite valuable, right? It's integral to me treating other people well. I need to treat myself well too.
Mhm.
But then there was a shift that I was seeing in like 2017 where people were getting very serious about their personal healing, because that's what self-love opens you up to. It opens you up to your emotional history and the fact that you have a lot that's been bundled up inside of you that you've been carrying.
Yeah.
So I need to do something about this. But what I saw was people taking a lot of, pretty intentional moments where they would be alone and they would sort of set themselves up to just like spend a lot of time in solitude and just focus on healing themselves, which is totally great. Like I totally support that. But at the same time, it's easy for us to take any idea and push it into an extreme.
For sure.
And that's what I was trying to combat, was like, okay, it's one thing to take periods of solitude. Like, trust me, I understand. Like, I go away for a month once a year to go meditate, and I'm
Yeah.
like totally offline, and it's something that is very nourishing, and it's a critical part of my personal development.
Mhm.
But at the same time, like trying to aim for these perfect moments, for this like perfect sense of, I feel amazing, but then oftentimes that feeling of amazingness is attached to there no longer being ups and downs in life, and that's just totally unrealistic.
Yeah.
Because even though if you're able to do something serious with like decreasing your ability to react to difficult things, like the difficult things are going to keep coming. So you're not going to like make this like perfect situation. And a lot of times, like you're going to be able to see the depth of your growth in those difficult moments. Like, how am I showing up as opposed to how I was before? Like, am I as triggered? Like, am I, able to give myself the space that I need to like, respond in a way where it's really supporting the person that I'm building
Mhm.
within myself. And yeah, just chasing after these perfect moments. It's attachment is really sneaky.
Yeah.
So we got to watch out for it.
Yeah. I think that's a big one for all of us, and we can get a little bit obsessive almost about healing to the point where I wonder, what's the point? You
Oh,
know,
I've been liking your posts. I
oh,
love the stuff that you've been writing recently about like this like getting on that constant treadmill and
yeah.
being aware of that because we got to put a pause to it. Like it's good to heal, but like it also comes in spurts,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, let's take a break and just like see where we're at right now.
For sure, because ultimately, what is the point? It's to enjoy your life.
Hmm.
Like we heal because there's an obstacle in the way that's preventing us from being present in the moment,
Yeah.
ultimately. Like, or at least that's, what what should be happening. Because otherwise what we're doing is we're kind of just like saying, I'm not enough or something's wrong with me and I need to fix it. And that's not real healing. Real healing is just gently clearing out the obstacles and the blocks that are in the way of us just experiencing love more fully. And
Hmm.
so that's what I like to remind people sometimes. Like I love, I'm a total therapy geek. I, spend most of my time studying and taking courses and, writing. And I also spend a ton of time just being super goofy and just hanging out with my friends and just, you know, having dance parties in my house and just enjoying life, going for walks with my dog, hanging out with my husband, and I'm like, in those moments, that's where I'm like, this is why I did the work because I couldn't let myself experience this type of connection when I had so many
Hmm.
walls. So that's why I did it, not so that I could just be on this hamster wheel, like you said, of just constantly finding something else to fix. Like, I just want to enjoy life. And I think your work does that as well. It gives people permission to step into the fire, like when you say like you can simultaneously heal your past while being open to the present. And make better decisions in the midst of living. Like, don't isolate yourself and go off and try to be perfect before you're ready for connection, because it's in that connection where you actually get to practice the tools that you're learning, right?
Totally, totally. And it's also important to understand, like, I remember having a conversation with a meditation teacher that I really look up to, and I was telling him how I wouldn't, have, like, there was a particular year, like 2 years ago, where I was like, I wouldn't have as much time to come as often to retreats as I normally would. Um, and he was like, that's fine. He was like, you need to stop thinking of the two things as separate, right?
Mm-hmm.
You do a good job in your retreats to do a good job in your life, and you do a good
Yes.
job in your life to do a good job in your retreats.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to take away that division, like they both serve their different purposes. Like you do much deeper work in your retreats, but you do that deeper work so that you can live well. And I remember also there's a story, a friend of mine was telling me how she spent like a long period in a meditation center, just going back and forth, sitting and serving and doing a lot of great personal work for many, many months. And then one of the lead teachers told her, you've done a fantastic job, and now like go home and go watch a funny movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like just like go home and cool off. And like it's important to realize like those periods of going deep, they're incredibly valuable because you get to see yourself with a sharper new clarity, but you also don't need to maintain that sort of same microscopic level of self-analysis, because
Mm-hmm.
that can also be detrimental because you need to be able to relax amidst all the pretty like strenuous mental work.
Mm-hmm. Which is something that I think a lot of people experience in romantic relationship when they start
Mm.
practicing conscious relationships. I kind of want to go there with you for a little bit
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you and I really jam on this topic. We get into a relationship and we're like, I'm going to be in a conscious relationship and like we're going to
Hmm.
do the work. And then what I see a lot when I work with couples is like, whoa, you guys are way over processing. You're like going
Oh,
to, I'm like, you guys need to like go have fun. You need to dance. So, Ben and I recently had, we hold space sometimes for couples in our community, and we had two friends who just needed some support, and they came over, and we did a little bit of processing, and then we just turned on music and just had a dance party because I was like, sometimes I think couples go too far onto one end of the
yeah.
extreme where they're like, we got to figure this out. I'm like, maybe, but like you also need to experience play together. Like we integrate so much when we're having fun.
I love that. And it's funny because I've been seeing the shift between my wife and I too, where we were like way more just like serious and intentional when we were trying to like get to know ourselves and find the like rough areas in our relationship that needed work.
Hmm.
But now what we've been shifting into is this like much lighter form of constant communication
Yeah.
where we're just like pretty like we're constantly taking our own temperatures and letting each other know like, I'm not feeling that good today.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure what the exact cause is, but I'm aware of it and I'm hoping that you can be aware of it too so that we don't, fall into any unnecessary conflict.
Yeah.
And that language, right? Like I'm speaking about it like in this way now, but it's more so in daily life. It just plays out like, she'll just let me know like, oh, like I feel, I feel a lot of like anxiety passing through. I feel a lot of like I feel anger coming up. I'm not
Hmm.
sure what it's from, but like I want you to be aware of it too. And it's much more lighter. Um, but I don't know, just having that door of communication wide open, I
Hmm.
think just helps us both know like, oh, is this a moment where I can support and or where I need to fall back and just give her some space or whatnot, but it doesn't need to be as direct and like strenuous. It's just
Yeah.
like we're learning each other's motions better and it's nice. It's lighter, but it's still effective.
Hmm. I agree. It's sort of like there are stages. I mean, there are stages of relationship which we know of, but then I also feel like once you get into this conscious relationship, there's almost stages to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Where like you said, and Ben and I were the same. There was a lot of processing in the beginning because there was a lot to process. There was a lot to work out. There was a lot of things that we needed to work on. And over time, it does just become a little bit more light, a little bit more casual, and sometimes I wonder if people realize when they get into relationship, if they're really committed to doing the work together, how long it's actually going to take before that ease sets in, because it's almost as if you commit to doing the work and then all of a sudden there's more stuff there than you ever imagined. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you get into the relationship and you think, well, it's a conscious relationship, so that means it's going to be easy, or there's not going to be triggers, or it's going to be all these things. And oftentimes it's almost the opposite for a while because you've made a commitment now, so everything is coming. And it can take years to get to a
yeah.
place where you're not trudging through the mud, so to speak.
It's funny. You're making me think too. Like I wonder specifically about, couples that because it's one thing for people to come together and like start a conscious relationship intentionally from the beginning, but then
Hmm.
it's another thing where couples like literally go from the dark to the light together and they're
Yeah.
just like, have been together for like many years and then they start realizing, oh, I need to do self-awareness work and I need to like do some healing work and then they actually start seeing the points in their past in the relationship how it was before where they did cause each other a lot of intentional and unintentional harm.
Hmm.
And that's one thing like between my wife and I, like we like the first half of our relationship was just like it was a hurricane. It was a mess. Like
Yeah.
we were together for we've been together for like 13 plus years,
Hmm.
but the first sort of like 5 7 years it was just there was zero emotional maturity between either of us. Neither of us knew I didn't know myself at all. She didn't know herself. And we, the connection was there, but that we didn't have the capacity to build on top of that and to
Right.
build anything like beautiful or harmonious or something that was really nourishing for the both of us. But it's funny because, we did cause each other a lot of unintentional pain then. And we were able to eventually make that shift when we both started meditating. We started building that self awareness and seeing like, how okay a lot of this tension is tension that I am causing myself, but then there were also moments where we caused each other a lot of difficulty.
Yeah.
So being able to sort of deal with the past and the present, but at the same time let the past be the past because now this is a break in our relationship where it's actually it feels like two different relationships.
Hmm.
This feels totally brand new to how it was then, but basically not getting stuck in the loop of just like living in the past and reimagining it over and over again because in reality where the best moments in your life they're going to happen in the present and you need to be there for them to actually occur. But
Yeah.
if your mind is always in the past then you're going to be missing out in a lot of your life.
Yeah. And you said something really important in this, which is not holding on to the past. That's really hard. It's hard for all of us, but it's amazing that you guys were able to do that, being together for years and years and having all of that sort of built up pain.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to move into a new chapter of your relationship, that takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength. And I often say, you know, a relationship will die and be reborn many times over if we let it. And I think one of the things that gets in our way is that when we're hitting a death cycle, when we're hitting that leveling up period, things can get really bumpy because it's time to let
Hmm.
that old version die. And oftentimes our minds will say, like, oh, it's time to end this relationship. But it's time to end the relationship as it is. It's not time to like end the relationship with your partner. You guys are just both going to a new level.
It's
And
true.
I
Yeah.
love that you guys did that. It's so inspiring.
That's so cool. You know, it's funny the way that you're putting it together. I haven't quite thought of it like that, where it's you do feel those moments, but it's yeah, it's totally time to let go of how things were. Not
Mhm.
necessarily like, oh, this is done between you and I. That is quite a different feeling. But and it's funny, it's something that happens to us too often because like my wife is a really serious meditator as well, and
Mhm.
we'll go away to these long meditation courses, and it's like as the course gets closer, it feels a little bit like a special moment because we know that this old version of us that is communicating right now, it's going to be gone because you come out and you spend so much time basically burning away these concrete layers of hard conditioning that are so deep in the subconscious of the mind. You come out as like a pretty new person, like your likes, your dislikes, like, you know, the way that you want to live your life, you have new goals. There are just so many big shifts. And then you come back and we are learning ourselves and each other again, and it
Mhm.
feels nice because it's this like constantly refreshing state because you know, we leave the doors to growth very open.
Yeah.
But it's cool being able to be like, okay, this was a really good version of us, let's see what comes next.
Yeah. That in itself to me is the that is the summary of conscious relationship. Can you see your partner with fresh eyes every day? Like
Mm.
actually, because I notice in my relationship, I really have to practice seeing Ben, my husband, as a new person every day and be like, I wonder who he is today. That, and I try to see him as, you know, the way that I saw him in the very beginning, because it's that innocence that we see in the very beginning, right? When we first meet a person, we see their innocence. That's what we fall in love with.
Hmm.
We meet, I think we meet a person's essence really truly in the very beginning, and then it sort of gets clouded with all of our judgments and our projections and our wounded stuff. um, and what you're talking about really is allowing your partner and your partner allowing you to change and grow. And not only that, but actually seeing it, because we hold people in this stagnancy sometimes when we're in relationship. We're like, no, I know who you are. I know
Oh,
your patterns. I
yeah.
know what you're going to say. I know how you are. You're this kind of person. And so it's almost like even if they do shift or change, or even if they try, it's like we don't want to let them. And part of that is because we just like hold on to sameness, but it's such a detriment. Like letting your partner become a new person and really celebrating them in that is so life-giving.
Yo, you're shining so much light on. It's funny because we're so on the same wave. I've one thing that I love writing about lately is just thinking of identity as a river
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh,
being
I
like
love
pretty
that.
committed to this imagery, you know, like see your identity as a river, something that's
Mm-hmm.
flowing, that's changing, that's weaving, turning, and just, you know, will go fast, will go slow, and will just have a lot of different versions of itself because
Yeah.
I remember growing up, hearing a lot of people be like, you know, they were so proud of the fact that they were committed to not changing. They're like, I'm going to be the same. This is how I'm going to be my whole life. But then it's like, well, if the nature of reality is impermanence and it's everything is constantly flowing at the atomic level, the biological level, the, you know, mental level, physical, if everything is changing and then you're trying to stay the same, then that means life is going to be very hard because you're going to be crashing upon the waves of change when you're going to be much better off to just allow yourself to flow and to just evolve and like, you know, have parts of yourself for a while and then eventually they'll pass away and change and become something else. And it's the same for like relationships, you know, like when I think of my wife and I, it's like we're like two rivers that have decided to flow alongside of each other, you know, and but they change, you know, we're because like who we were before is just long gone. It's totally different.
Yeah, I love that. Good medicine for everybody watching. If you ever feel like you want your partner to be different, well, you just have to see them today because they are. You know, we're different all the time. Just have to pay a little bit more attention. And that's the thing is I notice myself doing that at times too. Or one time I was standing in a line and we were waiting for sushi And this woman got her sushi order and she looked in the bag and she was adamant, even though her name and number was on the bag, that this couldn't be her order because her husband ordered some different sushi roll that he's never ordered before. And she was like, he doesn't order this. This is not our order. To the point where she like got on the phone and then he was like, yeah, I did order that. And she just looked so stunned. And I know it's such a little thing and anyone could have made that a thing, but it was, to me, it was kind of like spirit reminding me like, hey, remember
Hmm.
to let your partner change and try new things and be a new person. Let them surprise you.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
don't be so fixed on knowing your partner that you're not even willing to be surprised anymore.
Totally, totally. And it creates so much more beauty in the relationship when you just let it all flow and
Mhm.
take the course that it's going to take.
I want to read one more before we wrap up here. So
Sure.
this is, and I want to hear your opinion on this because I feel like I get this question 20 times a week.
Hmm.
This is page 63 for anyone who has the book. Okay, when you feel agitated because you think someone you love is not growing quickly enough, remember that you had to go slowly before you could make real progress. Managing your expectations and knowing that people grow at their own pace will save you from interrupting your peace.
Yeah, that's a hard lesson to learn. I think for a lot of us, when we get introduced to personal transformation work and just find some sort of path or technique that works well for us, we get really excited. And with this excitement, we want to like immediately sort of like project it and just like share it. And then a lot of it comes from a very good volition. Like we want other people to also feel good the way we feel good. But the reality is that the technique that works for me is not necessarily going to be the technique that works for you.
Yeah.
And also the speed that I'm moving at is not necessarily going to be the speed of your evolution as well. So being able to deeply appreciate that fact that we all have our own, like not only like our own paths, but our own speeds that we move through that path has
Mhm.
been so, it's relieved a lot of pressure, especially in my relationship, I think with my wife, and I think also with my brother and my sister and my mom and dad, just realizing that we're all in very different places and we're all to me, I think what I feel committed to is supporting other people in just accepting growth as a mindset.
Yeah.
And even if they're taking tiny steps forward, that's beautiful because
Mhm.
that's like them also, accepting that idea of impermanence and accepting that sort of like responsibility for themselves.
Mhm.
But even then, I can't dictate like, oh, you should be growing at this pace or this is what you should be doing next. Like, I have no idea what's best for you because even though we're all so close to each other, like my emotional history is very different from my brother and my sister's emotional history.
Yeah.
The way that we've reacted in the past, the way these imprints have left their marks on our minds, yeah, the conditioning is different. And because the conditioning is different, it may need different tools, different moments, different points of inspiration to like get yourself going and sort of fire it up to put energy into developing into your best self. And
Mhm.
when I think back like to my beginning, it was slow going. Like it was one thing at a time. And I can't expect other people to like, you know, if I'm at step five to like jump to step five when they haven't even hit step one.
Yeah.
And not that there's like a clear, like, linear thing of like, this is how things are supposed
Mhm.
to be. But it feels really like you get to lean on your own sense of tolerance and patience
Mhm.
because that's just one of the deepest forms of compassion. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I see your journey and I see the struggles in it and I'm going to support you as best as I can, but at the same time all I can really do is model like my own growth and my own, like, this is the way that I want to show up in the world. And it
Right.
all comes back to that Lao Tzu quote, right? Like, you look at the world and you wanted to change the world and ultimately you realize that you can only change yourself.
Yeah.
And when you change yourself, you can make some massive waves.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. There's also a little bit of like spiritual competition or superiority that can
Yeah.
happen too, I notice, where there's this like, I'm here and you're here, and like, you need to catch
Oh,
up. And it's like,
yeah.
well, we're all kind of at different stages in all areas of our lives all the time. I see it more like kind of like you said, like a river rather than like some linear path. I think one of the things we have to watch out for is comparing ourselves constantly to our partner, or like measuring where we're at compared to each other as a way to stay separate, because we don't
Yeah.
realize we're doing that. It's like we use these sneaky spiritual, tools and all this lingo to make it sound like we're being really conscious, but really we're still just like guarding our heart and being like, well, I'm
Yeah.
separate from you. And what would it be like to practice just like fully loving you where you're at today, and fully loving me where I'm at today? And understanding too, like you said, like not everybody has to do the work at the same time or at the same pace. But also one thing I've realized is some people just come into this world with a little bit of a different skill set in
Yeah.
relationship. Like there are some people who like they're not in spiritual work at all and they're great at relationship. They're just
Yeah.
not really secure. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's awesome. That's not me. I have to work really hard. But I think sometimes people are like, well, I'm not going to date a person unless they're like all of these things. And I'm like, just be open to who the person is in front of you. Like they might be amazing at relationship, and that's just one of the gifts that they came into this world with. Like those people exist too. I'm a little more rare, but they're out there.
I love that. That's so funny. You're making me think of one thing that we joke with a lot, like amongst my friends who are meditators, are like,
Yeah.
you have to be really careful with spiritual math,
Yeah.
like, and you think it's like you can try to add together like all these different forms of progress, but in the end, what's really happening is your ego playing a game. Like the moment
Yeah.
that you're still looking down on someone because they haven't reached some like imaginary thing that you've like attached yourself to, then you're also losing, because it's incredibly like insidious and tricky that it
Mhm.
will grab, the ego will try to grab these like things that are meant for you to become less harmful to yourself and others, and then quickly you start like reinforcing hierarchy and start reinforcing like all this like stratification, like spiritual stratification, that is totally unnecessary, and just if anything, it'll just reveal to you that you need even more work around unconditional love and
Mhm.
unconditional acceptance. And
Mhm.
like it's totally fine, like it's fine to encourage someone and tell people the truth, and also do that in a compassionate way and encourage people's growth if it seems proper, because everything's
Yeah.
pretty situational. But at the same time, like the moment that you're looking down on someone, you lost.
Yeah.
So it's time to check in. But I
Yeah.
think it's yeah, it's powerful to be able to just like accept people for who they are and not constantly be nudging them, because then that's just another point of, it can be an ember that can turn into a massive fire.
Well, and it kind of gives I mean, this is not a message for people who, if you're in a relationship where somebody's behavior is like
Right.
impacting you in a really painful way, and, people
Mm-hmm.
always say, well, like, what about this situation? What about that? So I always disclaim, like, if you're in an abusive situation or a dynamic where, person's behavior is really hurting you, then of course, you have a right to either ask for behavior change or to remove yourself.
Right. Right.
But in a lot of situations, that's not the case. I mean, in relationship, the fact is you're just going to get your feelings hurt sometimes. Like your partner's going to say things that hurt your feelings or rub you the wrong way. You're going to hurt your partner's feelings. And we need to learn how to be with that as well, instead of, stacking it up and, taking score and, waiting for the right time to throw it back in their face. It's like, it's part of the journey, and in those moments, a gift that you can give your partner is to see their innocence and to bring them your vulnerability, rather than,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
telling them that they're not doing the work, or, whatever, comparing yourself, because it just creates more distance. And sometimes, yeah, the journey is slow, and it's not going to be perfect probably ever, unless
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you become an enlightened transcendent being, which I don't know
It's
about you, but I don't think I'm going to get there in this life.
it's very rare, yeah.
No rainbow body for me.
um, it's funny because it makes me think about like a lot of us were seeking for these like profound connections, but at the same time, when we're looking out into the world and seeing all the different people who are giving advice, like we need to watch out for the mind's um, just tendency to fall into extremes, right? So
Mhm.
like I'm so glad that you gave that disclaimer, because a lot of times we'll like give advice for different points, but then it's like that same piece of advice, it's always situational, right? It
Yes.
depends on what's happening. And even that advice, like, it may be something that clicks for someone who, it just makes sense at that point, but then for someone else, it could be something that's very harmful. And if they
Mm-hmm.
keep doing that, right, you need to have your boundaries, and you need to be able to have enough self-love to not let other people abuse you. And that's
Yeah.
critically important. Like, a lot of people are learning that, but at the same time, if you're taking that to an extreme, and then you build so many boundaries up that you're no longer allowing your ability to um, develop your skills at conflict resolution, right? Then that's also going to be harmful too with your friendships and like intimate relationships. So finding that proper balance for yourself is key, and it's totally individualized. So and even when, like, when we write things and we put up posts, like, a lot of times people respond, but what about this? Well, this post was just about this one subject, and
Yeah.
it's one perspective on this subject. It's not the totality of this subject. So all we can do is just give perspectives, and hopefully they inspire people. But at the end of the day, like, you and I don't have all the answers. So
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah,
We
everything's
all
just
have to
very situational.
practice.
Yeah.
Practice being discerning and practice being, resourced internally, and to trust yourself enough, because I find when someone is, really reacting to a post and, defending their position and why the post doesn't make sense, what I'm seeing there is just like a fear of like, what if I'm wrong? Can I trust myself? And I have a lot of empathy for that, because when you're trying to trust yourself, or you're learning how to listen to your gut or your body or your heart, and then you see something and you think that it's a blanket statement, it can be really scary because you're like thrown out of your center. And so one thing I really try to remind people too is like, you have to learn to listen to your own inner compass. And if a message resonates with you for where you're at, then that's beautiful. And if it doesn't, then that's okay too. But if it really upsets you, then there's something there. There's something, maybe you don't trust yourself, or maybe this message really just doesn't resonate for where you're at. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that you have to take it on. And that's one of the, I think, challenges of social media. Something that really frustrates me about social
Yeah.
media. I find it
Right.
really intense to be in that space sometimes, because there's so many opinions and so much noise. So we have to learn how to tune it out sometimes, take what feels resonant, and then let the rest go.
Yeah, that's why I've been really just like enjoying this like structure that I've been putting the books inside of, like
Mm-hmm.
having inward and clarity and connection be these books that you can open up to like any page and almost get some sort of reflective material for the day, because
Mm-hmm.
what you need one day may not be what you need for another day. And at the same time, like, this perspective on love and relationships, it might be totally apt for like these few months, but then a few months might pass and it's like, oh, this other perspective in the book is actually key. And I think being able to hold the multiplicity of perspectives is actually a sign that not only your emotional maturity is growing, but your wisdom is growing. And I think it's key. Like, if you're able to see more perspectives outside of your own, then you have internal security.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I could probably write a book on every subject that I post. So that's why I'm like, well, there's so much nuance, right? We have to learn how to parse through it all for ourselves. And I love what you're doing with your books, because it is true. It's like sometimes I don't want to pop on Instagram, and then I'm just like, I'm going to pick up the book and, you know, find something that resonates and see what it means for me. And so this is the book for those of you who have just joined. It's Clarity and Connection. Your other book is Inward. Is this, how many books do you have? Is
Only
this your
two. This
second?
is
This is
this
your
is the
second
second one. Yeah.
one and two. Okay. Yeah. So I have both. They're lovely. And where can they get this book?
They can get it in all bookstores and online on Amazon, Book Depository, Bookshop, and yeah,
Cool.
it's out there.
And you are at Young Pueblo. And I don't know if you guys know when you're watching, because a lot of people are asking, like, how can I find his profile? So if you are watching right now on your phone, there's like, you'll see Rising Woman in the top, and then you can just click the little drop down and it'll show you his profile. And you can actually
Mm.
click on that and you can follow him and his work. Um, Thank you so much for today. I feel like we could chat forever. I'm sure we'll do this again. One of the things that I appreciate about you is you're just so genuine and loving. Like I feel your love and your heart in everything that you do. And
Mm.
sometimes when I read your writing, I'm like, oh,
I was feeling and thinking that exact thing today, but you said it even better. And yeah, I just have such a deep appreciation for who you are and your work in the world.
I feel the same way about you, my friend. I feel like when I go to your page, it's so refreshing, and I'm just getting like different perspectives on topics that I'm also thinking about, and things that, like, I just haven't thought of, and I'm like, oh, like that is clutch and so important. And
Mm,
yeah, I'm glad that we're in this space together. Really grateful to be sharing this space.
me too. Thanks so much.
Thank you too. Have a beautiful day.
You too. Bye,
Thank you,
everybody. Thanks
everybody.
for tuning in.